Ontario Liberals now have a majority government, so it's likely that we are going to see that budget that they put forward and got defeated on put forward yet again. And so Candice Malcolm joins us, Ontario Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Candice, great to see you again.
Good to see that.
And the real fear that you have is that the pension plan that Ontario introduced in that budget will be reintroduced. Right.
It likely will. I mean, Kathleen Wynne has come out and said she's going to reintroduce the exact same budget. So, they think that they got a consensus from the people throughout the course of the election to implement their plan. So, according to what Kathleen Wynne is saying, they're going to implement the same budget, which included this new pension scheme. It didn't really get a lot of mention or discussion during the campaign, but it's a substantial piece of legislation. It will mean about $1,000 less in take-home pay for the typical Ontario worker, and she's basically building a secondary CPP scheme just for Ontario, which sets a new precedent. No other province has a system on top of the CPP. Quebec has their own pension plan, but they're excluded from the CPP. So this would be in addition to our CPP contributions.
It's an additional tax. What are your thoughts on the CPP? I mean, Kathleen Wynne has been saying CPP isn't good enough for everybody. What do you think?
Well, Pat, CPP was never meant to be the sole source of our retirement savings. It was meant to just sort of be there to help people to top up on top of their own retirement savings. So Kathleen Wynne complains that CPP isn't enough to let people retire off. Of course, it was never intended to be. Despite the fact that Kathleen Wynne wishes that it would give more money to people, the federal government under Stephen Harper has actually been increasing year after year after year the CPP contributions. So the typical Canadian taxpayer in the last year contributed about $3,000 in combined EI and CPP taxes. The CPP is going up more and more, and it is actuarially sound. It's considered to be paid out for the next 75 years. So the fund is strong. It's just only going to give you a small portion of what you might possibly need to retire on.
Yeah, and I remember not that long ago, certainly 20 years ago, that they said that the CPP would run out in 2015. So now that you say it's secure, what is the problem with the OPP, not the police force, the Ontario pension plan?
Well, the whole idea, there's several problems with CPP, and not, one of them isn't that it's sound. It used to not be sound, but now it is. But the problem is just it's not fair to mostly to young workers, people who are just joining the workforce now. The original first people who received CPP in the 1960s were paid out 17 times more than what they ever put into the system.
Paid out 17
times more.
Wow.
And it's slowly gone down. People my age, anyone under the age of 40, would be lucky if they ever received about 2/3 of what they pay in over their lifetime. So, this isn't a personal retirement fund for every individual Canadian. This is a giant Ponzi scheme. People are paying money into a system today to pay out people who are retired now. There are going to be a lot of problems given that baby boomers are retiring, the workforce is contracting, and because of that, younger workers are forced to pay more and more and more. And really, Pat, that just prevents them from saving for themselves. If you're contributing $3,000 a year and after in payroll taxes to CPP and EI, and then you're also now expected to pay another $1,000 a year to this new Ontario pension scheme, how on earth are you going to actually be able to provide and save for your own retirement? And so I think that Kathleen Wynne might have very good intentions in worrying about retirement savings, but another government scheme that's unfair, especially to younger workers, is not the answer. It's not the right move for Ontario.
Should Ontario set up something like the tax-free savings account or something along those lines?
Yeah, that's my piece that I put out today. I advocated for that. And, a lot of countries around the world have moved to this model of a personal, independent pension fund. So instead of contributing into a big government scheme where you don't really know what you're going to get paid out, there's no guarantees, and it's really not connected to you. Places like Australia, Chile, or federally the Canadian or the tax-free savings account, it lets people connect personally with their own savings account. In Australia, it's required that workers contribute to it. About 92% of Australians own part of this pool. The pooled fund is worth over 100% of Australia's GDP, the valuation. So people are doing very well. The typical Australian retires with a lump sum payment of several hundreds of thousands of dollars, $200,000-300,000, which then they individually get to decide, how they're going to divide that, how they're going to make that work for them throughout their retirement. So it gives them more choice. It puts individuals back in the driver's seat. Kathleen Wynne's plan does the exact opposite. It makes people more dependent on government. It creates more reliance on a big government scheme. And again, just relying on these two funds, it would be a meager lifestyle to transition. It's not enough to live off of, and the government shouldn't give people the expectation that they can live off of just their state retirement.
House of Outrage when they put that situation in Australia, because people said we can't save enough. They're 100% in, you get 100% out plus interest and earnings and those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. And now people love it there in Australia. You talk to them.
Yeah, I mean it's not a perfect solution. There were some problems with it, and there's always growing pains with a transition. Mm-hmm. But in the long run, it's been about 30 years since Australia has moved to that system, and it really has meant people retire richer. And the same can be said in Chile. It transitioned part of their economy. It really helped that country develop, economic development, help the labor force, and Chile is now the richest country in Latin America. So these new kind of ideas, innovative ideas, are kind of popping up all over the world. And Kathleen Wynne, instead of doing a broad consultation or some kind of a process, she really just sprung this up out of nowhere, and now she's going to be imposing it. And again, it's sort of a stale, outdated 1960s model of a state pension, when there are all these new kind of innovative financial opportunities out there that she's just looking right past.
Yeah, Candice, great to have a chat.